Welcome back to the Making a Multi-Million-Dollar Med Spa podcast, where we have real conversations about what it takes to run a successful business. Thank you for joining us as we share our day-to-day successes and, even more importantly, failures and mistakes. Listen in as we host some of our peers, colleagues, and other experts in the field. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hey, podcast listeners, this is Kat. Thanks for checking into the Making of a Multi-Million-Dollar Med Spa podcast. Today, I'm going to do a quick clinical chat, and I want to talk about something that is really one of the most popular treatments at aesthetic care. So one of the things that we've seen over the last year is a big shift in using the BBL technology. And I want to cover a little bit about how we started out with BBL, what happened, even 4 to 5 years ago, and now how we're incorporating HERO into our practice. So first things first, I want to talk about the most important thing to consider when you're choosing settings for BBL. Whether you're doing a corrective BBL treatment, a Forever Young BBL treatment, or HERO, there's a really important piece to choosing the right settings to avoiding complications. And that's really choosing the appropriate skin type. So, for years, we've used a kind of checklist, looking at what color are the eyes, what color is the hair, how does the skin respond to the sun. And I think, I look at the top 3 things I consider now are still some of those. Eye color, if they have blue-green eyes, they typically are Fitzpatrick 1, 2. Not always, but most of the time. If they have light brown eyes, they're typically a Fitzpatrick 3, 4. And if they have dark brown eyes, they're a 5, 6. Then I ask them a question. When you were 16 years old, out at the pool, soaking up those sun rays, how quickly would your skin burn? If they burn, never tan, Fitzpatrick 1. If they burn within 30 minutes to an hour, around a Fitzpatrick 2. If they say, I burn in the beginning of the summer, but I can tan, we got a Fitzpatrick 3. Fitzpatrick 4s don't burn. They tend to tan, on their walk to the mailbox. So, I really look at the color of eyes. I ask them that question. And then the most important piece is looking at their skin on the day of treatment in the area you're treating. So what do I mean by that? If your client walks in and they have blue eyes, but their skin color looks like they have a tan, or they look more like a Fitzpatrick 3 or 4 in the area you're treating, choose settings for a Fitzpatrick up. Don't choose the Fitzpatrick 1, 2 button. Choose the Fitzpatrick 3, 4 button. When in doubt, start as the Fitzpatrick 5 and then work back down into the 3, 4 settings. That'll really help you to avoid some of the biggest mistakes that we see with BBL, and particularly the striping. So, again, look at the color of skin on the day of treatment in the area you're treating. If it looks darker than it should for what their eye color says, go up in the Fitzpatrick scale. On the flip side, if they come in and their skin looks very pale, they do not get in the sun, but they have light brown to dark brown eyes, again, choose that higher Fitzpatrick to start with. So if they look pale, more like a Fitzpatrick 1, 2, but they have light brown or dark brown eyes, start them as a 3, 4, especially with light brown eyes, or start them as a 5 if they have dark brown eyes. You can always adjust the settings as you go to still get to those clinical endpoints, but avoid the complications. And so that is the tip of the day. Make sure you treat the color of skin that you see in the area, not just their eye color, not just based on the answer that they give you when you ask them how their skin responds to the sun. So I like to start there because I think it's important to, I always ask when I bring in technology, and how do I stay out of trouble? And that's one of the ways to really help keep you out of trouble. So another thing I want to talk about before jumping into specifics between BBL, Forever Young BBL, and HERO is just, a little bit about, I guess just to say, you don't have to just do one. We have this amazing toolbox in front of us. We're not just going to use the hammer or just going to use the screwdriver. Let's learn about all the tools that are there so that we can get the best results for that client every time. And so, yes, I am a huge fan of HERO. I love it for many reasons. 1, speed. 2, we're able to put more light in, which really supports the study that was done at Stanford in terms of getting long-term results and tone and texture of the skin. But I still use the basic knowledge, the fundamentals that I learned years ago with BBL in order to get those safe and effective results. And so I often think about cooking when I'm talking about lasers. And you look at cooking chicken. You can fry chicken, you can bake chicken, you can put chicken in the crock pot, and you're using, when you're frying it, high heat at a short period of time, or a crock pot, low heat over a long period of time, and yet both are edible. We can still eat the chicken. And so I think when you're thinking about BBL in terms of the energy, high versus low, pulse width, short versus long, one pass versus multiple passes, one pass at high energy, more like frying the chicken, low energy over long periods of time, more like crock pot cooking. You're still able to get to those clinical endpoints. And so it's just, again, understanding the fundamentals so that you know what to change when you're in that treatment room with that client. All right, so let's jump in. So, we launched BBL. We were one of the first users of BBL when it came out years ago. And back in the day, BBL was all about correction. IPL had been out for a couple of years before. And at that time, IPL was pretty slow, pulse every 3 seconds. I mean, look at us now, we're at 3 pulses in a second. But this was a pulse every 3 seconds. And so it was very common to do a pass with BBL and spot treat, or maybe 2 passes with BBL and spot treat. And so the client would come in, they say, my number one concern is rosacea. And so I would treat the rosacea to clinical endpoints. I would look for the pigment lesions, spot treat, or a full pass if they have pigment lesions everywhere, get the pigment lesions to clinical endpoint, and I was done with the treatment. Forever Young BBL comes out and changes that, but yet we still needed a thorough or a plan, a step-by-step protocol to be able to launch this new method at a clinic where it's not just one provider doing every treatment. Then we had around 10, now we have 18 at one location. And so just a plan to be able to implement this treatment and still keep it safe and yet get these really amazing results. And so we started with a 3-step program, like many of you have done as well. The first step was all about what we would call base passes, or really prepping the skin. We're dumping as much light into the skin as we can safely, but yet we start to get a little erythema. It teaches us about that skin. And so if you had started them as a Fitzpatrick 3 and they have blue eyes and you're doing those passes and you see nothing happening in the skin, it says, okay, hey, you may be able to treat them as a Fitzpatrick 2 in step 2. On the flip side, if you start treating and they have blue eyes and you're doing these low energy passes that you think you should get like 0 results or 0 clinical endpoints on, and you start to see microcrusting, you start to see erythema, you say, okay, I probably should stick to that Fitzpatrick 3-4 setting when we move into step 2. So I love step 1 at that time for that. It was a way to do a more thorough treatment, but safer. And so we did that method for many years. And so step 1, again, was typically, the 560 filter. And again, I haven't talked about a skin type. I haven't talked about if I'm treating on the face or neck. So these are not any type of settings to memorize. You want to make sure you look at the safe start settings for the client that you're treating. But we would use lower energy, 6 joules, 7 joules, 8 joules, pulse widths like 15 milliseconds, and then lots of cooling, 15 degrees cooling to really protect the epidermis while we're doing those 2 passes. Knowing that we're going to come in with step 2, and step 2 is really where we're going to be looking for those clinical endpoints. So step 1, again, was 2 passes at those lower energies, lots of cooling, lower energy settings, lower fluence settings, and lots of cooling, so that we would be able then to go into step 2 and get to those clinical endpoints. So step 2, the whole philosophy behind that was to take that BBL treatment that we started out with before Forever Young started and implement that into the protocol. So the client comes in with rosacea, I would do full pass and spot treating until I got to clinical endpoints for rosacea. And then I would do the same for pigment, spot treating the pigment lesions, or again, if they're covered in pigment in the area I'm treating, I may do a full pass for pigment lesions. At any point during the treatment, if the skin is hot and getting hotter, if you're seeing petechiae and purpura, or you see something you normally don't see, you stop right there. You aren't going to continue and do additional passes. So just, I want to make sure I point that out. But again, step 2 is all about clinical endpoints. And so you may just spot treat in step 2. You may do a full pass and spot treat in step 2. You may just do one pass. Again, once you get to those clinical endpoints, we were done. And so I love it because, you were able to really understand the results that your client was going to get. And that's always given me so much confidence with BBL. Are you struggling with high turnover? Do you need expert training for your providers? Are you ready to take your business to new heights? Let Mint Aesthetics provide you with the knowledge to meet your goals, expand your practice, and get amazing results. Mint offers aesthetics training through online e-courses, hands-on training, virtual training, and business consulting. Whether you're a beginner or more advanced, you'll gain a competitive edge by accessing cutting-edge e-courses designed exclusively for professionals like you. Imagine the return on investment as you master advanced treatment techniques, refine your post-care protocols, and expand your knowledge base to offer unparalleled treatments to your clients. It all begins with quality training. Don't wait any longer to invest in your clinic. Join the ranks of successful aesthetic professionals who have transformed their careers with Mint Aesthetics training programs. Visit our website at mintaesthetics.com to book your training or gain access to the online e-course catalog. Your team and business will thank you. Consultations and talking to clients about why I thought this treatment was so great for them, because in my opinion, seeing those clinical endpoints, it was like the magic eraser. You buy the magic eraser at the store and you watch that little black mark on that white countertop disappear, and over that week, as long as you got to clinical endpoints, it truly was like a magic eraser. So that's step 2. Step 3, then we would use Skin Tight. And so Skin Tight was not used as a skin tightening treatment in Forever Young BBL treatments of aesthetic hair, but we would use it to enhance the treatment. More light is better. And this, again, all goes back to the study that was done at Stanford. And so we would spend 3 to 5 minutes, treating, using that handpiece in the mid-lower face. I wasn't using it on the forehead, not necessarily around the mouth, like mid-lower face, submental area, and really just heating it up, dumping in more light, getting that temp up to 39 to 43 degrees Celsius, and not really focusing on it as much as when I use Skin Tight as a standalone treatment. But it gave me the opportunity to talk to my clients about it, like, yeah, we can do this as a standalone treatment. It can be done on the face, neck, chest, arms, abdomen, hands. And so that was always a great kind of pass over into another type of treatment, when we were doing that step 3. And so that's what you'll see kind of. So there we go. We've started with BBL from the beginning. It was all about correction. A pass with spot treating typically was how it was done. Then Forever Young comes out. Now we have 3 steps. We have the base step, we have the correction step, and then we have the Skin Tight step. And now here we come to Hero. And so there's a number of different ways Hero is being done out there. Remember, this is our toolbox. We get to decide, now that we know the fundamentals of how to use it, what to do with Hero. It can be used as a standalone treatment, meaning you can do 2 to 3 passes in an area with Hero and get to those clinical endpoints. And I have found that with clients that have moderate to severe pigment, that's pretty common. If you have a really light skin type, Fitzpatrick 1, 2 with really light pigment, maybe they've been coming to you for years and years for treatments, it's a little bit more difficult to get to those clinical endpoints with Hero. And so you're gonna do some spot treating. You're gonna pull that step 2 back into your Hero treatment. And so a typical Hero treatment for me is still 3 steps. I'm going to do that base step. I'm going to do 2 to 4 passes in Hero mode. And I say to 2 to 4 because, again, you get to choose how you're going to cook that chicken. You're going to choose, like, do I want to be really conservative, start with those 2 passes, see what pulls up, and then go back into that corrective step 2 part of the treatment, because you're used to doing that. You've done BBL for 10 plus years. You know how to use those corrective settings. And so you're going to spot treat and get to those clinical endpoints. And that's a great way to start using Hero. So you're going to sub out Forever Young BBL passes at 8 joules or 7 joules, 15 milliseconds and 15 degrees in, out, and then you're going to sub in, 5 to 6 joules, lower energy, 3 milliseconds, really short pulse width, and then 25 degrees cooling. Not a lot of protection there. And so while the fluence is decreasing, the pulse width is being turned up, so to speak, even though the number's going down. And the cooling is being turned up, so to speak, well, because it is, we're not cooling the skin as much. And so you can start just with those 2 passes and then go into your step 2, treat to clinical endpoint. You may just spot treat. You may do a pass with spot treating. And then go into your step 3. And so step 3 for me, again, is more similar to skin tight. I'm going to use the 590 filter for the most part. I'm going to do 2 to 4 passes with that 590 filter in hero mode. It makes it much faster, and yet we're seeing some really great erythema. We're seeing some of that pigment that was not quite there. It kind of gets it there. And so, you can take that hero technology and decrease the amount of time that you spend during the treatment, and yet you're still increasing efficacy, and you are still very safe. And so I think that's one of the most typical ways you'll see hero being used. So again, you can do pulse counting. That's a great way to do it. You can do counting your passes. That's a great way to do it. I think the number one thing to remember is that we want to get to clinical endpoints safely. And so there's a number of different ways to cook the chicken, you guys. Just find the one that works for you. And, of course, we are a training facility, so we would love to help you with that. Stop waiting, come see us at Mint, and we can help you do some hands-on together. So a couple of things just before we finish up this podcast, a couple of reminders, BBL is by far the number one energy-based device at aesthetic care. I mean, we have 35 pieces of technology, and it's still our number one light-based device or energy-based device. And so, it just tells you the range of clients, of patients that you can treat with it from head to toe, the efficacy of that treatment, that our team believes in it. Otherwise, we would not be doing that many. And it really all just comes down to you learning what tools you have in the toolbox, how to use them differently for each client that comes in to get the safest, best results possible. So, I think just a couple more things again. Well, I said that before, but I still got another one, is that you don't have to quit BBL during the summer. I'm not going to treat my tan clients with BBL during the summer. But if I have a client that comes in and the skin on her face is much lighter than the tan she has on her body, I'm going to treat her rosacea during the summer. I'm using the 560 filter. It's much safer than the 515 filter. And so I have a lot of confidence in using the BBL in the summer on the right client. So again, we're not going to treat tan skin, someone that's just come from the pool and is heading back out to the pool. But if the area that you're treating is lighter, has not had recent sun exposure, does not have a tan, you can treat them. Just don't be tempted to treat their face and then they say, oh, but can you go ahead and just grab that one little pigment lesion on my neck or my chest, and their neck and chest is tan. That's when you're going to leave that big white circle around the pigment lesion with that 7mm spot. So don't be tempted to jump down on a part of the body that's had recent sun exposure, because that tends to be the time that we get in trouble. So thanks for spending some time with me today, you guys. If you are an e-course subscriber, check out the laser physics course with Pat Clark. It's in our premier e-courses. He's going to give you the fundamentals of IPL, BBL. He's going to really help you understand all the tools in your toolbox so that you know how to utilize your BBL device. And then also, of course, our full BBL course that we're going to cover: corrective BBL, forever young BBL, hero, how to use it on the face, the neck, the chest, all over the body, how to do combination therapy with it, and all of the resources in terms of all of the forms that you need for your clients, a manual to follow along, our cheat sheets to get the safest, best results possible. So, if you haven't done it, if you haven't become an e-course member, go ahead, give us a call. Let us help you out with that. I really think you're going to like it. So again, thanks for spending the last 10 to 15 minutes with me, actually 17 minutes if I'm looking at the timer. I really enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it too, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. We would love it if you left a review to help other providers and clinics find us. Also, if you want more information about anything we discussed in this episode, check out our show notes. Until next time, this has been the Making a Multi-Million Dollar Med Spa podcast.